Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, its primary role is basically to deal with issues of labor. The discussion on mental health continues, and welcome to Beyond the Surface this time round. We take time to discuss mental health in the perspective of labor migration. Ronnie Mukundane is one of those that has been in this business for a very long time. His area of expertise and knowledge is at a consultant's level. We discuss what are some of the mental health issues, how best can we empower workers so that when they get there, they have the ability to deal with mental health issues. Mr. Ronnie Mukundane, it's my pleasure, and thank you very much for joining us on this Beyond the Surface.
Thank you so much. I greet you all our viewers. My name is Ronnie Mukundane, labor migration consultant. Basically about the movement of people from here, or Ugandans, I would say in this case, going abroad specifically for employment.
First and foremost, I would like to find out your definition for mental health in relation to labor migration.
My understanding of mental health in relation to this particular sector, labor migration, I would say is where I've seen cases of people experiencing distress. And distress, of course, in different forms, which I believe we shall discuss much later. But it's where you see people going to work, not being able to finish their tenure because they have developed some psychological or distress. I don't want to say they have lost their minds, but something in that area. That's what I would say. That's how I understand labor migration in relation to mental health.
So, Mr. Ron, when does the process of labor migration begin from?
Labor migration indeed is a bit detailed, I would say. And for purposes of time, I will just request that you allow me differentiate the two types. One is what we normally call regular migration or regular labor migration. That is where you have people travel from, say, Uganda to any destination country. In that process, they are cleared by their country of origin, which is, in this case, is Uganda. Basically, they are known of how they are traveling. And then the other type is the irregular, where we don't normally call it illegal because people have a right under the UN to travel. So we call it irregular because they are not within the laws. So they travel sometimes as tourists. You've heard of those who have traveled on visit visas, tourist visas. When they reach the other side, they now look for employment. Then they become now labor or migrant workers. Now, this process, whichever of the categories one falls, is that it starts from the desire to go and work abroad. Now, that desire could either be influenced by a friend or a person you've seen, or even influenced by an advert of which a company or an individual has run. Now, what happens next is the selection for those who are traveling legally. For those who are traveling irregularly, that selection is not there. They are told of what to do. If there is money being required to be paid, they pay the money, and then next they travel. But these other ones that are traveling through the government agencies or those that are known undergo various stages. From selection, they go to training, pre-departure training, visa issuance after they have gone through medicals, and then they travel to go and work for a particular period of time. Once their tenure ends, then they are returned or integrated in the community, which is not normally the case with the other category. But that's how labor migration in simple processes are.
For sure, if you read the reports of Ministry of Internal Affairs, there are those that get out of this country legally. That means following the law. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that there are those that fly out of this country illegally. Help us digest this matter on what are some of the things that happen to those that go legally and those that fly out of this country illegally.
Those who are traveling legally are the ones that are known by the government for. They are traveling either as an individual who have been cleared by the government, because an individual, you can also seek a job, but then you must register on EMIS, which is a government portal. Then the Ministry of Gender clears you. Then you are known by government that you have traveled to country A, and then the embassy there is notified that Fred Makuya is coming to work as ABCD, and then your whereabouts and details are known. The same way, there are also those who travel through companies, the companies that are licensed by the government of Uganda. Now, who are licensed to source and place Ugandans abroad. Still ways the government is aware of you because you are in the system, which is called IMIS. So the government is aware. Now that is the regular or the legal way. Then the other category, or the irregular, are those that travel, as I said earlier, either on their own, either as tourists, either as visitors. But even when they reach their destination, for example, this normally happens in the Middle East, even in China. So they travel on their own, or even they try to go and visit as if they're going to visit. But when they reach the other side, now they start looking for employment. Most times they have been lucky, depending on the country, and they get employment. Now they turn to migrant workers. They turn to Ugandan migrant workers, but when they actually are not known. Now, these are prone to so many issues, and some of which, of course, end up causing what we're discussing about today, which is mental health.
So mental health is a broad thing. Bring me to speed on what are some of the mental health issues that occur when it comes to labor migration.
Those two different categories, I want to say there are particular mental health cases that we have seen, but also there are also common ones. Common ones could include anxiety. We have seen cases of where people have said they have judge those things that are following them. Now, this does not discriminate for whether you've traveled legally or illegally. Now, we've had those cases where people can't work. They say they have gone, they have gone mad. Sorry to use that word, but and then they need to be brought back. Then we've also seen cases of anxiety, maybe due to the language, but also the area they are in. Remember, when we talk of labor migration, we're talking of Ugandans who are leaving their own country to go and work elsewhere. Chances are so high that you're going to work in an environment where you're the only, it's only you from where you're coming from. What do I mean? That you are working with other people from different countries, different culture, and different, So that alone creates that issue of communication. Now, for the other category of those who have traveled illegally, it becomes even worse, that you find that even how they traveled from here in itself creates a lot of challenges. You find it's the issue of communication. They have not been able, maybe they have the normal way which we hear. I can't say that we know, but which we hear of how people are taken. They are told either to switch off their phones, they are told to hide. Now, you find someone has taken maybe a week or so in the process of traveling, and by the time the person gets back to his or her family is over a month. Now, within that whole period, there's anxiety. There's lack of communication. The person is not hearing from his or her people back home. They're also not hearing from that person. So it creates a lot of psychological issues. Now, you might find this person does not necessarily need to be there for about a year or so. That alone triggers anxiety. Now, the other category, the normal, or what we call the regular travelers, we've seen cases because of their nature of work. There are those who are restricted in terms of their office. What do I mean in terms of office? There are those who would normally call domestic workers. Not that a majority of, not all, but most of them experience that challenge of communication. You find even when they're in a home, the TV that is being shown is, say, in Arabic or Chinese or whatever local language that that country is using. And because they are not able, even when they have their free time, they're not able to understand, they still have that challenge of feeling alone, that isolation. So that in itself will definitely trigger anxiety, will trigger thoughts, will trigger whatever the person might have and cause this mental issue.
Anyway, it's a very interesting discussion. What are some of the causes of mental health issues when it comes to matters of labor or migration of workers?
The travel mechanisms also matter. The way a person travels. One fact we know is that those who have traveled irregularly are mostly prone to what we call the 3Ds. The type of jobs that we've categorized as 3Ds. 3Ds, we mean difficult, dirty, and difficult, dirty, and dangerous jobs. Because they live here when they are not sure of what they're going to do. All they reach their side is to look for a job, and whatever available job is there is what they take. And most times you find these available jobs that maybe have not been taken up legally are the ones where someone is required to climb a 20-story building, even if you're using a crane to go and clean windows. That in itself is a dangerous job, because should anything happen, surely you may not survive. That will trigger, you know, because those are the jobs. They will not have a chance of being the other side, and then they secure a job of working in an office as an accountant or do supermarket, or they'll have exposure to those dangerous jobs, and that itself will cause that anxiety. And then they will also have the working conditions in themselves. You find they have long working hours. Now the long working hours in themselves, they will cause great tiredness, which makes them not like where they're working, and in the end, of course, cause some of these challenges as we're talking about.
Some of these issues, I am meaning the mental health issues, some begin while the person is still in the country, but there are also those that keep revolving or start when the person is the other side. Talk about those, Mr. Ronnie Mukundane.
Indeed, as I talked about the process of labor migration, one undergoes to be externalized or migrate for labor. The mental causes or for this particular discussion, I would say start from here. For example, you find because most of the people anyway that travel, or those that are taken to work abroad, for the case of, like, say, ladies, single mothers, that in itself already creates a certain feel within these people. Now, you find the person, as he or she is leaving to go and work, already has obligations. That's why even when they are undergoing the other stage, which I talked about, orientation or training, the attention is not there. When they are told, look, when you reach, you're going to be maybe in a place that the country you're going to, or the home you're going to, is speaking a language which you may not be familiar with, but the mode of communication for you will be limited English, which you may know, which the other people may also know, but they have also their language which they speak, which you do not understand, which of course brings in the issue of communication. For them, they're not paying attention to that. All they're looking at is the money they're going to earn, and the money, that's what it's going to do for them in terms of the obligations they have left home. Now, at that point, already anxiety comes in. But also, we've seen cases, like I mentioned earlier, of where there are traditional related issues, where the family does not want this person to travel, because there are those people who travel and say, do not tell people. Even when I've gone for training, don't mention. We've met them. So that in itself, I would say the cause already starts from here. They say, Bandoga, you know, those things, when I'm getting into a plane, don't say until I've traveled, you know. So you have those cases. But the majority of them have come out when they are the other side. The process could start from here, but for them to exhibit that they have mental issues, we've seen most of them on the other side. When we talk of people jumping off tall buildings, that has happened the other side. So, and you find maybe the process started from here. But as I said, it is normally to do with what is actually, or what we would call working conditions, or the setup, or the environment itself. Not necessarily the work, but also the environment the person is in, that triggers most of these challenges. When we say environment, we mean not necessarily the type of work you're doing, but where you're staying. You might find the person is staying in a hostel, but then the people the person is staying with have a different culture. You might find the person is the other side, they're getting calls from this side, send money for this, send money for this. That alone creates so many challenges for a person on the other side, and feels, even when they get, by the way, sometimes they get information that maybe the money they've been sending to buy a plot, to build a home, actually has been misused. And the person says, I've been here for 2 years or 3 years, I cannot return home. How will I look when I go without anything? They decide to commit suicide, for those that a few cases that we've seen.
It would be unwise for me to discuss mental health issues if I don't look at the empowerment. How best can we empower our fellow brothers and sisters who leave Uganda to go and seek for employment? So how best can we empower them so that when they are faced with mental health issues, they have the ability, the audacity, the capacity to deal with the mental imbalance that occur to them on a daily basis?
There are various stages where this process of empowerment is being done. We mentioned that there are two stages. There are those that are still here, and the process, and of course, those that have traveled. While they are still here, they undergo what we call orientation or training. We know why this training covers so many topics: financial literacy, culture, distress, and all those things. How to overcome stressful situations, which, of course, leads to the topic we're discussing today. Why do they go through this? We know that people come from different cultures here, even within Uganda, different backgrounds, different financial status. There are those that are working. Maybe you find a person is working here earning about 50,000 or 100,000 in Uganda a month, and the person is going to travel and earn about $1 million or so, you know. And so this person needs to undergo financial literacy, to be told, for example, how do you manage this money? So that the person does not get too much excitement that, look, I have this much money, then I can do ABCD, and when that money actually cannot achieve what they are set or they think they can get, then they become distressed. Now, within that period, as I said, there are different topics, which includes how to manage stressful situation. Now, that is here. There's normally saying that you can prepare someone, but that preparing someone does not mean that person is ready. As a training institution or as a government using that curriculum, they could prepare this migrant worker. But whether that person is ready with what they have prepared him or her with is another question. And as I said earlier, there is already that excitement that even when they are told, look, if you reach, greet the person or maybe your boss, expect to have ABC. These are your obligations. These are the obligations of your boss. Because of that anxiety, that excitement, some of those things pass. So, according to the authorities here, they have prepared that person. But when you measure the person, he or himself or herself, she's not ready or he's not ready. Now, that's that challenge. But when they reach the other side, there is also what is put in place. For example, for the category of domestic workers who are most prone, by the way, to some of these challenges that we're talking about, because remember, they live in more or less isolated areas. What do I mean isolated? They're not alone, but they're actually alone in terms of being with people they know. You find the person is working in a home, and most probably could be the only black person in that home, and most probably the only Ugandan, even if there are other blacks. So that, even if it's a home of 7 people, the person is already in isolation. Now, that category is more prone to whatever challenges we're talking about, these distress things. What has been put in place is that this category is normally supervised or normally talked to by what we call supervisors. The licensed recruitment companies send supervisors to keep in touch with this category of people. Normally, it's about 1 to 100 people. Why do they do that? If the person is in a home and is experiencing any challenge, needs someone to, yes, the person could decide to call the company here, decide to call the company, for example, in Saudi Arabia, or could even decide to call the family here. But the chance of getting a quick response may be hard. Now, if this person is introduced to that team and say, look, when you have a challenge, there's this person here to get to. You find the person, some of the challenges can easily be mitigated through a phone. And those are some of the measures that are being put in place to try to give these people as much support as possible. But also, they're encouraged to form social groups. Now, these social groups, they normally share the challenges. We find someone says, look, my boss is doing this, I'm maybe not getting this. They are experiencing things like, we normally have cases. This is more of a Christian nation, and you find most of our people travel to the Arab nations, and they have phases they go through as a country or as a religion, and things like fasting or Eid. Now, the person in that home, they may not understand you that, look, for you, maybe you've never fasted, for example, or fasting, taking a whole day without eating, that itself would cause, so they find the person cannot speak to his bosses, but then through the social group, is able to say, look, guys, me, I'm going through this, what do you do? And the person is advised, like, look, you can talk to your people, even when, by the way, the company is here. Try to engage the foreign companies the other side to be able to talk to the home owners to prepare, to allow maybe this category of people, these people who cannot fast, to be able to have something to eat. I'm saying fasting as one of the other challenges or the other hurdles these people would find. So this encouraging them to participate or form these social groups helps them as one of the ways to mitigate such challenges. But also being able to speak, not only through those channels, but also being able to contact the companies, even their own families, by the way. We encourage them, or they are encouraged to talk to their own families, so that in case, because there's something it creates that you have talked to a person who understands you, who can hear you. So even when you have a challenge, that person can advise you, even by the way, just talking to you and say, look, maybe hold on, remember what took you, maybe this is not a big issue, you can overcome, the person is able to settle, other than just being left in the open.
For sure, in Uganda, I know there are good bosses, very good bosses, but I also know there are hard, rude, and segregative bosses. Do these also exist when it comes to the other side of the coin?
I'd want to say the worker or the employee relationship across the world is more or less the same. It could differ in terms of categories or levels, but it's more or less the same. The same way as indeed you said would have rude bosses here, you'll have rude bosses. Even in China, you'll have rude bosses. In the US, you'll have rude bosses. In Saudi Arabia. What is normally done, or what normally becomes a difference, is that the movement or the travel of this person, or the acquisition of this worker, or the recruitment of this worker in this case, when the person or the employee is recruited formally, then the employer knows he or she has the obligation or the responsibility to meet the terms from his or her side. Things like salary, things like food, things like accommodation for where it's supposed to be. Now, when the person has been recruited illegally, just the same way if you pick a domestic worker here or a maid from somewhere around the bus park or somewhere and say, you come to my place, when there's no one there's no one who knows that this person is working at Mr. Makubia's home, chances of you saying, I will not pay you this month, or when the month ends and you chase the person out, could be high. But when you know that I received this worker from so and so, if this person leaves or makes a cry, the person will ask me, did you pay this person? Has this person eaten? Why is this person sick? So you'll find that you'll put more emphasis on trying to have the person experience good services or good care within your hands or within your family. The same applies the other side. So what am I trying to mean here? That the percentage of those who would suffer under the hands of abusive employers or bosses is majorly that category of those who have traveled illegally. Because then the person feels, or the boss feels, there's no one to ask me the whereabouts or the status of this particular individual. But again, as a government, and I think what the government is doing is to try to sensitize people that, look, if you're traveling to work, go through the legal means, either through a company or through the government itself, as I mentioned earlier, that they can clear you. If you can secure a job as an individual, you don't necessarily have to go through a company, but you must be cleared by the government. So that you are known, the ministry here clears you of labor, they informs the embassy the other side, then the embassy knows that Mr. Makui has come to US and is working in a company A and stays here. So that when you get any challenge, then that embassy is able to offer you assistance.
Let's now talk about one of the other sensitive area, and that is an area of sex. For sure, if you looked at a man like Abraham Maslow's, in one of his theory, he talks about sex as a need. And so if somebody flies out of Uganda, one of those things that are denied, but very, very essential, is the issue of sex. How is this handled when it comes to matters of mental health, particularly for our brothers and sisters who are out of the country?
Um, that's a very challenging question, indeed, and a challenging fact, because we have encountered those same questions, and when you do these field visits and discussions, you meet those questions, and indeed they are factual questions. We know sex as a human need or a desire. And it is true that you find someone has traveled for a period of about 2 or 3 years, as you mentioned, and wondering whether they will have a chance to meet that particular need. Unfortunately, it has turned out to be bigger than we thought. First of all, when you travel as a worker, irrespective of the country, and I'll speak specifically for the countries in the Middle East, one of the biggest crimes that one could face under their Sharia laws, which could cause death, is a sexual act that with a person who you are not legally married to, irrespective of whether it's a man or woman. Now, these people undergo through training, which I've always been talking about. And I mentioned that different topics in the curriculum, one of them being social, welfare, and what to do. I'll be sincere, they are encouraged not to think about it. On whether that is true or whether it is applicable or not, but they encourage not to, because where they are going to work, irrespective of the home, or those in factories, offices, they are not going with their spouses. Now, if you are found in that act of a person that you are not legally married to, it becomes a big crime. Those who have gone to countries like Somalia, those who go under security, have been lucky, some of them, that get what we would call leave here, mostly after every 1 year. When they come, then they're able to meet their families and all that. But I do not know that if there is any other method or any litigation measure that the government or the authorities would put to have that particular desire met. But as it is now, they're encouraged not to engage in it. Whether it can cause them to have mental issues, it's another, but they are basically encouraged not to think about it.
In Uganda, we talk about Butabika as one of those rehabilitation centers for people with mental health. Do we have another Butabika when it comes to maybe the Middle East, or mention any other country that Ugandans get out to earn a living?
Indeed, every country has, because it's a fact that every country has mental health issues, either for its own people or even foreigners. There's countries that most of our Ugandans go to are advanced countries, or would say developed countries, that where we may say we have only Butabika in Uganda, for them they have many medical facilities that handle psychological or psychiatric cases. However, there's also a funny, I don't want to say funny, but there's also been a scenario where, not one scenario, but many scenarios where they've had people, or would I say victims, that have had distress or psychological issues and are not able to be worked on from those countries of where they are. And those are the ones that are related to traditional belief or traditionalists and all those things of Bajaj and all that. They have managed what is manageable medically, but for those cases, they have referred, those people have been brought back, which, by the way, the number is high from the statistics that our reception center or the reception center of the sector in Entebbe used to collect. And for those, even when they would be taken here, brought back and taken to Butabika, they would not be managed. Then they would go traditional and other things, and then in the end they would settle. But what I want to say is that the medical facilities in those countries that handle psychiatric cases are there, but we also must also know the type and category of psychiatric cases that our people experience. Traditional cases, of course, not manageable the other side, and they have even gone worse that even such people cannot come alone on the plane until they reach here, and then somehow, one way or another, that case disappears. But for those that are managed medically, they have been handled the other side.
I am also sure other countries have reception centers. In Uganda, I do not know what the case is. Do any of these anyway exist? I mean the reception centers in Uganda.
The mandate of the government, for example, the Ugandan government, is to have or set up reception centers in every country where the Ugandans are. Where there's a big number, because when you have a big number, you will definitely have cases of distress, including those who want to return and don't have papers, don't have whatever. So the government's mandate through the embassy is to have a reception center. Now, whether our government has reception centers in the countries where the Ugandans are is a big question. And the fact is that those centers are not readily available, or they are not really there. Those that are there are privately owned or owned by the companies, the countries of destination, or the host countries in this case. Now, the host countries, when they have a reception center, that reception center is not exclusive to Ugandans. It's for foreigners, for example. You have, for example, in Saudi Arabia, if you have a reception center, you'll find it is accommodating those from Singapore, it's accommodating those from Nigeria, it's accommodating those from Uganda, from all over the country, from all over the world, for those that have come to work, and with different cases. Now, the ideal situation would be that the government of Uganda would have its own reception centers in those particular countries, so that whatever challenge these Ugandans are experiencing, whether mental, whether medical, or whether whatever it is, it would be handled in those. I know there is always a cry of, we've always had a cry of lack of financial support in terms of facilitating these embassies to set up this, but this is what is required of the government, because we all know that labor migration, or Ugandans in this particular case that work abroad, remit a lot of money to this country, and that money indeed it would be ways that it is put back in the sector, and one of the things is to improve the welfare of these people who make this money.
It would be unwise for me to talk about mental health if I don't give you an opportunity to talk about and find out whether labor or migration of worker has any contribution to the economy of Uganda.
It's a known fact, as I said. I remember I did not pick it in this budget financial speech the minister made, but the other last one, I remember it very well. The Minister of Finance mentioning about 1.3 billion US dollars being remitted or being received by the country from its nationals or Ugandans who are working abroad. That in itself, from even any person who has had financial statistics being put out, gives you the impact. When we talk of 1.3 billion US dollars, the other sectors, we normally talk of coffee, how much does it bring in? About $600 million every year. Tourism is also about there. So what does that mean? That this money, and remember this is money, by the way, what people do not normally miss is that this is money that is purely coming in from the foreign countries. It's not that you've sold something here, or it's not money that is revolving within the sector. This is money that is actually coming in. Now, if it contributes that is financial. But also, we should also look at the other social impact, that the burden of unemployment here is kind of relieved by these Ugandans going to work abroad. That itself is a benefit. But also, these guys who go and work abroad come with skills. They get exposure. So if they are brought in and taken in back well, or integrated well, these are skills that they would bring in here and help also improve our own lifestyle, our own what they normally pushed in terms of what to create jobs and what. These are skills that these people can bring in, because most of them, by the way, do what we would call manual or hand related work. So if the person can learn how to operate a certain machine, then they can bring that here. And if there's a facility for it to be set up, then the government could benefit from that.
You have the opportunity, Mr. Ronnie Mukundane, to make your final parting shots on matters of mental health in relation to labor migration.
Maybe what I would say regarding our topic of discussion today is that the mental health in relation to labor migration is indeed one of the big challenges. And how it could be looked into is if people are encouraged to go through legal channels, because it is through there that the authorities here take them through what they would do in terms of when they face these challenges. But we also know that one of the challenges is that people travel anyhow, anywhere. And because it is a right for one to move, that exposes the many of our people to these distress issues, which in the end, of course, cause these challenges.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ronnie Mukundane. He is a consultant when it comes to matters of labor migration in this country. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and how best we can manage mental health when it comes to matters of migration of workers in this country. For sure, I know that managing mental health in Uganda and outside Uganda is a collective responsibility, not only for these people in the labor sector, for you as a doctor, for you as a business person, you the academicians. Everybody must join hands together to see to it that we deal with matters of mental health in Uganda and outside Uganda. Beyond the Surface comes to the end. We catch up next time. Remember to subscribe to this channel, because this is where we discuss the real issues of mental health. My name is Fred Makubuya.